Who are our favorite Star Trek captains? Man, that's a great question. I still don't know who everyone chose. So if you're watching on YouTube and you're wondering why we're like flipping through our slides, it's because I just had to make a slide for everyone because I didn't want to spoil the surprise for myself. So sorry. And if you're on the podcast, ignore this bit. Guys, I am so excited to talk about our top 3 Star Trek captains of all time. We're going to be going through them today, and we're going to start at number 3, build up to number 1. All 3 of us probably have different picks, so, buckle up. It's going to be a fun one. I am Joshua Noel, and I am here with 2 other hosts, the one and only Christian Ashley, and for the first time as host, Reverend Justin Coleman. Guys, welcome back.
Thanks, Joshua.
Thank you.
I'm excited. But before we jump into anything else, let's go into what we've been geeking out on lately. Actually, I picked up Disney's Illusion Islands. It's just a 2D platformer, just like side-scrolling game. It's fantastic. It's so simple. I love simple sometimes. Sometimes simple is just nice, It's on Switch. It's good. It's not the best game, but it's good. It's a side-scroller. Side-scrollers are side-scrollers for the most part. Christian, what have you been geeking out on?
I last night finished Persona 3 Reload, and I'm going to need to take some time off to deal with the ending. Okay. I knew it was coming, but it still hit pretty hard. I wish there was somebody else in the group who was playing it so we could do an episode on it.
You could probably.
Might have to save that for a What's New. TJ's already said it's not for him.
Oh, sad. Well, Reverend Justin, what have you been geeking out on lately, man?
Well, last week I was down with a cold, and it happened to coincide with Avatar: Last Airbender coming out on Netflix, and so what a better excuse to binge that, and I'm still geeking out about it.
I am halfway through episode 5. I stopped because I said, "Oh shoot, it's time to do this podcast." It's on pause though. I didn't even turn the TV off. I'm just gonna go right back to the other room after this and hit play.
There you go.
Oh man. So far I'm really enjoying it. I think the only thing is I wish Aang was a little bit more childish and fun. I get why he's not. They're trying to get more to like straight to the point, but that's the only thing. And if that's my only complaint, man, it's better than that movie. Anyway.
Yes.
Anything's better than that.
Yes.
So with that, I do want to ask everybody, if you can, to rate and review our show on Podchaser, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Give a big like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. We appreciate all the subscriptions. Remember, if you don't smash that like button, you are smashing Will's heart, and none of us want to do that. So be sure to smash that like button. And we would do a big thanks to one of our supporters, Austin Nance. Austin, you rock. He's been listening to the show from the very beginning, and he donates to hear some of our bonus stuff, like what we're going to do at the end of this episode, and Austin rocks. So thank you, Austin. We appreciate you. And if anybody else out there is listening, is like, man, I want a shout out, you can always support the show. You'll get a shout out. All right, so let's jump into this, guys. I'm excited, mostly because for the most part, I consider myself a new Trekkie, even though I've kind of been watching since I was a kid. So I'll do like my asterisk here to make this make sense. As a kid, I watched the Star Trek original movies. I could never get into the show. And every time I try to get into Next Gen, it just never stuck. Like I'd get like 1 or 2 seasons in, and I just would forget that I was watching it. But then like 2 years ago or whatever, I finally stumbled upon Lower Decks. I loved it. And they would make jokes about these other shows. And I was like, well, I got to see that show so the joke makes more sense. And all of a sudden I was doing these rabbit hole chases. And I was like, I ended up kind of like fitting the whole Star Trek universe together in the last couple of years. I'm like, I love this. I actually think the only one I haven't finished is still Next Gen.
I can do it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I really could not explain to you why it just doesn't click. But it's fine. Christian, what is your history with the Star Trek franchise?
Ever since I was a little lad, my dad, who is a huge Trekkie, introduced it to me. Whenever there was a rerun on back in the day, like we'd be there watching it, and he'd probably be recording it on VHS so we could watch it later. Um, kept going through that, like, read through some of the manuals and stuff like that as he would buy them, reading through the descriptions of the episodes and has seated what else is going on here from the original Trek all the way to Deep Space Nine to Voyager, Enterprise. Whenever we would go on a trip together to my grandparents' house, so it's about 2 hours. So we would just when those portable DVD players became a thing, just pop in one of the Star Trek movies and watch that on the way down, even though he's supposed to be driving. So yeah, Star Trek has kind of always been a
Perfect.
part of my life.
Beautiful,
Hmm.
beautiful. Reverend Justin, same question. What's your history with the Star Trek franchise?
Yes, I too have been watching Star Trek since I was a wee lad, and um, my family's a blended one. And so, one of my elder brothers who didn't live in the house with me, but we spent time back and forth together. I still remember when he was coming and visiting at the house I lived in, showing me my first episode of the original series. And we sat and watched. It was a fun brother bonding moment, but I loved that show and have been a Star Trek fan ever since. I may or may not have gone to conventions. I will not tell you if I dressed. I also will not tell you whether or not I've kissed a Klingon. So that's my journey with.
That's my favorite teaser we've ever had on SG. Fantastic. Oh man, good stuff. So with that, one of the big things that always gets on my nerves whenever I'm scrolling through and see clickbaity titles like the title we have today of the 3 best Star Trek captains, I'm like, well, what do you mean by best? Like when you say this, are you saying like who you think is the most efficient, who you find the most entertaining, who's just like the best person? Like what do you mean by that? So that I don't create something that I would myself be annoyed by, we're going to explain what we mean when we say who are our top 3 captains. For me, it's a little bit of like who I would want to be my captain, if that makes sense. So it's not always necessarily the best because sometimes you just don't click with people. And I feel like I've already given away that Picard's not going to be my pick because I obviously don't click with Next Gen for some reason. I don't know why. I just don't click with it. I think he's a great captain, but so for me, it's really just like so for a lot of it, it's going to come down to like who my personality meshes with, and a lot of it is like who is a good captain. I'm obviously not going to pick a terrible captain as my captain, and then also I think some of my Christian values are probably going to play a part a little bit. Like who do I think is an honorable guy? Who do I think matches up to my values the best? So those are the things that I'm looking at. Reverend Justin, what are you looking at when we say best captain or top 3? What do you mean?
Well, along a similar vein, I am looking for someone, as you said earlier, that I could follow. And what I'm imagining is someone that I can imagine leading an organization that I was a part of, or if I was on a naval vessel or whatever, this person is making the kinds of leadership decisions for the crew, for the sake of the entire enterprise. And I don't just mean the ship, I mean the Federation, who is representing those values well. And as you note, one whose values I can see connecting with my personal religious values as well. So I'm looking for that kind of real world captain that I not only would want to follow, but also someone that I would want to emulate in certain ways as it relates to my own leadership.
Yeah, that definitely gets to my number 1 pick, but more on that later. Christian, what do you mean when you say best or top captains?
I completely agree with my co-hosts here. It is who would I want commanding me, because I don't want to be in that seat. I don't want to be the one making that decision. I will be perfectly fine to support you wherever the heck I'm at. If I'm in engineering, I'm in engineering. If I'm in the science team or the security team, sure, I'm there. I'm helping you out. But I don't want to be the guy there making those calls. Like, if the Romulans go through the neutral zone one day, it's like, oh well, go back. Don't do that. I don't want to start an interstellar war, even though they really started it themselves. It's like, who is that? Who is that person that if I were under their command, I would feel like, hey, for the most part, we jive well together. You're someone. If I had to make one of those decisions, would I typically agree with those decisions? Or if I didn't, could I understand why you made that decision? And we can just have that disagreement off camera. I want someone who is what you kind of have to be as a captain. You have to be this multifaceted being, someone who is capable of diplomacy, someone who is capable of kicking some butt if you need to, someone who is also kind and caring and can also be a huge parental figure, huge spoilers for who's going to be my number one. And all those things together are why I would not ask for reassignment to a different ship, to a different captain.
Yeah. And another one for me, when I'm thinking of like who I want to be my captain, is like I do want to be captain one day. So I'm also thinking like who I think is most likely to help me get where I want to be, Which is also a great thing if you're looking for a job and you're doing interviews. Interviews not a one-way thing, everybody. This is just like free advice. If you're going somewhere and you want to move up in a place, ask them. See if it's the kind of person that your manager is going to be someone who wants to move you up, or if it's someone who's just there to do a job. Important things. I love where I work. Moving on. All right. Our top three, starting with number 3. I don't want to go first each time. We're going to go alphabetical order first time. Number 3, Christian Ashley. What are you thinking?
Okay.
For your top 3, number 3, captain.
New Trek and I don't like one another for the most part. I despise Discovery with every fiber of my being. I am not a fan. I don't really like Burnham. Georgiou's okay. Lorca's okay. But the best thing Discovery ever did was introduce my pick to new audiences for the first time, and that's Christopher Pike. I adore Strange New Worlds and what they've done with him so much. It just seeing him as this, for the most part, calm, collected guy who can, when the need calls for it, get more emotional, get things done, become a more rough and tumble, more Kirk-esque figure. But he is, as made very apparent in the episode I'm going to bring up, very different from Kirk. And there are some things that's good, some ways that's really bad. So are we asking for that part yet? Or are we good?
Yeah. So I think you already did just justification. So I was going to ask everybody, when you pick yours, to pick an episode that really shows what you're talking about with your pick. So yeah, let us know what episode you think really shows Christopher Pike shining.
Yeah, I'm going to argue it's the one where he kind of gives his worst, and that's the Quality of Mercy, where he is taken forward, made the wrong decision. It's like, because he has learned through what happens in Discovery how he's going to end up in the state we see him in the original series, where he is in this machine hooked up on life support, can only make beeps to like express himself, like he is stuck in that chair alive. And you got to go, well, what kind of a man would pursue that future? What kind of a man would say, yeah, that's where I'm supposed to be? But no, he fights against that for a second, makes a bad call, but an understandable bad call, to keep those kids who would have also died in that explosion alive, and saves himself. So it's a win-win, unless you forget about what would have happened had he remained captain of the Enterprise. And it comes to that point where in this new future, he doesn't play the balance of terror as well as Kirk does. And it is made very apparent, like, hey, Kirk's more maverick instincts in this point in time are the way to go. You need to show a little more strength to the Romulans, so they don't think we're a bunch of pushovers, that they'll just cross over to neutral zone and start a war again. You need to make them realize, hey, we're just as cool and awesome as you. Let's not kill a bunch of people for the wrong reason. And what makes him really one of my favorite captains is the choice he makes at the end. Those things that I'm going to end up as, that chair I'm going to have to live in for the rest of my life, it is worth it for the entire universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Solid pick. All right. We're going to throw it over to Justin. What are you thinking? Your number 3 pick for best Star Trek captain.
So I am going to do a 3A before I do my proper 3, because I do want to say if Philippa Georgiou had more episodes properly in the captain's chair. So you have 2 Georgious. You've got a Georgiou that passes away fairly quickly at the beginning of Discovery, and then the alternate universe Emperor Georgiou. Golly, that could have been one of my favorite captains if we'd seen that, move forward. However, in the absence of that, I really am. I'd say everything that Christian has said about Pike. Strange New Worlds is good Trek. I believe it's good Trek writing altogether, and gosh, I mean, I'd even name the same episode if not that the crossover episode with Kirk, which name is eluding me at the moment, where Pike has this sense that, hey, Kirk really could be the guy here, and again, the choices that he's making are not quite spot on, and he realizes that this Pike is having this dialogue with his future self in that episode. It's just a good it's good writing, and I think this is the kind of captain that you'd want to follow.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I'd follow that. Like, good captains are human, at the end of the day, and they are capable of making great mistakes. There's not a single person I have on my list who hasn't made a huge blunder at some point in time in the captain's chair, but they learned from it. And Pike learns from that in this episode to make sure that doesn't happen, even if it costs me everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, my pick for 4, 3, and 2 are all so close. Like, so close. You asked me a different day, I'd probably tell you something different. Number 1's the only one that's not close for me. But for 3, I'm going with Captain Carol Freeman of Lower Decks. I love her. I love her relationship with her daughter. Yeah, it's a comedy. It's supposed to be kind of silly or whatever, and it's not as serious as some of the other Star Treks. But man, the way she navigates family and crew, and yeah, they're not the number 1 ship, but she takes it just as serious as everything else. I think it's incredible. Not only is she just funny, but for me, one of the big reasons I would want to be under her, she's not afraid to hire other people over her family and promote them. And also, she's one of the few captains to me that really owns up to their own mistakes. Like, she's really good at saying, yeah, I messed up. Here's what we're going to do about it. And for me, the episode that really shines, I don't know the name of the episode off the top of my head, but there's an episode where she sends her daughter off because she thought her daughter was being rebellious and said all this bad stuff about her ship and ruined the crew. So she said, you know what? If you're going to mess up our whole ship, you're going to mess up the crew. I'm sending you off. I'm not going to let you bring everybody else down, right? Then she realizes she was wrong, that someone planted that the Enterprise, or not the Enterprise, the Starfleet itself was kind of working against her. There were some bad apples in the bunch kind of deal. She realized she messed up and dropped everything to go after the one and said, I messed up. We have to make this right now. And to me, that's a good captain. Whether it's her daughter or not, she says, if I mess up, I'm going to own up to it. We're dropping everything and we're going to make it right. I love that. I thought it was so cool. Yeah. And again, I picked so many other people.
for the reasons you said.
Yeah.
She is one of the most human captains we've had as far as screwing things up.
Yeah.
And then owning up to it. Like that, I can't remember that episode name off the top of my head either, but it's that same thing. It's like, well, because of what Mariner has done in the past, historically speaking, I can say it's her versus, oh no, it's what everyone else was saying that kind of worked together, as well as being screwed over by these bad elements within Starfleet that have caused this. I need to make amends. A lesser captain, a lesser woman in that situation would have said, I'm going to stick by what I said, but she didn't.
Yeah.
She
Or she could have
recognized
even
what
said,
she had done. Yeah.
Yeah, it even could have been, well, you messed up so many times before. Of course I believe that. You know, like I feel like an average leader would have came up with an excuse of why it happened and not just said, I'm wrong, let's fix it. And just like that we're taking action kind of thing. Yeah. Like I like how you worded it. She's very human. Ironically, the most human captain is an animated one. But I love it. All right, let's go to number 2. We'll start with Justin this time. Reverend Coleman, who is your second favorite Star Trek captain?
So number 2, James T. Kirk.
All right, here we go. I like James. I like Kirk a lot.
So, and I am, and we can talk about the multiple iterations of Kirk now, right? So I am going to go classic Bill Shatner Kirk here. Though I have enjoyed other iterations as well. So Captain Kirk is, as a leader, he certainly can be a bit of a maverick, right? And so this I hate to lose this drive. I mean, Kirk is a very American kind of a captain, if you will, and so he has this insatiable drive to win, but with all of that bravado, that maverick nature that Kirk can have at times, Kirk still believes in the community that he is enmeshed in. And so one of the things I love about Star Trek is the ensemble work with these crews, and particularly with the bridge crew and their extensions into engineering and medical, of course. But you get what I'm saying, the core crew. And what we have here in the original series is you've got the bridge crew, but you have this trinity, really, right? It is Kirk, it is Spock, it is Bones, and they are a triumvirate, a trinity of sorts. And there is this sense that they exist best in community, and Kirk gets that. As competent as Kirk is, as much as he's pulled the Enterprise and its crew and, my gosh, the galaxy from the clutches of disaster, he realizes that it's because of these people that he has around him. And that's one of the things that I love about Kirk, that great competency, as well as that sense that he's not alone. It's best done in community. And oh my gosh, what episodes to point to lift this up the best. I mean, I don't know. I do think that the essence of Kirk that I've just talked about, you see it in glimpses in the original series. I think it's all crystallized, however, in the movies. And I mean, I love the character and the crew before. It's really in the movies that I'm sorry, I liked them before. It's really in the movies that I learned to love them. And you know, the second, you know, the even movies are the best. Well, they, in some ways, they're the ones that capture what we're talking about most. Um, and so, but what better scene than Kirk falling off the cliff and Spock saving him, and Kirk saying, I've always known that I'd die alone. Well, I mean, there's a sadness in that, but there's also, and then, well, I mean, did he die alone? That's talk about that. But there is, but I think what was sweet about that was him saying, if I have my people here, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. So anyway, James T. Kirk, my number 2.
Man, I love Kirk, and that's where I was like, my 2, 3, and 4, they're all so close because like, I love Kirk. Man, to me, he's like the American Doctor. Like what the Doctor is, he's the American version. Because he thinks in such creative ways. He always finds that third way, right? Where it's like you have to make this impossible decision, and he always finds a way that's neither of those two options that he's been given. And he's able to corral his team. Everything that happens after the Revenge of Khan, all that stuff, I'm like, oh, so good. Yeah, Kirk is amazing. I think the thing for me is like when I rewatch the movies now, some of how he talks about women is like, yeah, we know better now. That's why I like what they're doing with this character in Strange New Worlds, because they're kind of revamping some of that.
Oh yes, yeah. It's you can't really defend certainly in the original series, even moving into the movies, you can't defend Kirk's the misogyny that can run through that character. Yeah. And you're right. Strange New Worlds does try to modernize.
Like he's still a womanizer, but here's what it looks like today, and you're like, okay, that's better.
Yeah,
I can stomach that. Yeah. All right. I'll go next then with my number 2 pick. Man, yeah. Again, 4, 3, 2. They're just so hard. I'm actually gonna go with something you all already brought up. I'm going with Christopher Pike, amazing captain, for all the same reasons that you guys have already said. He's so darn likable. To me, part of what makes this hard is Kirk has always been my favorite, but now I'm watching Strange New Worlds, and Christopher Pike is who Kirk could have been in my mind. He still has that American kind of vibe. He's very masculine, all this stuff, but not in a chauvinistic kind of way, not in a misogynistic kind of way. He's very respectable. He cares about his team. I love Christopher Pike. And just like even the beginning of Strange New Worlds, and he's like riding on the horseback, and I'm like, this is who Kirk is today for me, is Christopher Pike. Because he has all the same stuff, but he's got a little bit more of modern values, modern sensitivities, I guess. And he's just kinder, I think, to me. He just comes across kinder and maybe a little less full of himself. To me, the big moment, and this is going to sound so dumb to everybody ever, but if I had to pick an episode, I'm actually going to go with Subspace Rhapsody.
So good.
I love that episode. He doesn't really do anything spectacular. It's not like because he was awesome that I'm like, that's the episode. But it's rather you see all of the team being in this place where they're forced to sing their emotions because of some, weird sci-fi thing that's happening. And they're able to still work together. Everybody's able to play their part. And you see everybody at their best being themselves. Mm-hmm. And when you really think about it, you realize it's because their captain has enabled every single person on that crew to fully be themselves to their full potential. So when they're given a situation like this, he doesn't have to shine. Everybody shines. And that's the kind of captain that I want to be behind. I love him. I thought that was a great episode, a lot of fun. It was really funny, but also it showed the team as a team. And I love that. So,
No, that's so good, and
Go ahead.
I love what you are kind of saying about him and Kirk because of, and I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it is almost like to bring in a little theology here that Pike is, like a Kirk moving towards sanctification. he's just on that journey of sanctification. Yeah. I like that.
Man, I like that description. When I talk to my aunt later, I have to use that. She's a huge Star Trek fan. Oh, that's funny. All right, Christian.
One of the things we didn't bring up real quick that I really enjoyed that they do with Pike, as contrasted with the other captains, is how personable he is. Those meetings that they have where he cooks dinner for his crew, he brings up the lower decks people, he brings up the people on the bridge, and then brings them together.
Leadership.
Imagine that. And it's just so charming to have someone who could easily just say, I'm above you, you listen to what I say, we don't need to be friends or anything like that. But no, like, hey, I want to get to know you people. You're working under me. How can I be better at my job? That's the kind of leader that I'm like, yes, please hear what I have to say. And I know you're going to at least listen.
Well, and even after all the stuff that you brought up in his, when you picked him for number 3 of like his time travel weirdness that he had to like navigate, what was fascinating is the lower decks crossover when they come, how quick he is to, I don't want to know. Do not tell me. He's so responsible with like not wanting to know his own future. That's not something I could do. That's like, I need him to teach me how to be that way. Because I tell you, if I meet some animated version of us that's like hundreds of years in the future, it's like, oh, you guys, I know you. No, I want to know why you know me. Did I do something terrible? Did I do something great? Like, I need to know ASAP. But he says, nah, don't tell me. He's responsible. And I need to learn that responsibility.
Well, and just one more thing to say here about that I want to say about Pike is that, in my responses to these 3, I'm weighting them based on their impact across my life.
Yeah.
So time spent
that's fair.
makes a big difference. I do want to say that Pike represents our high mark right now as far as captain writing. I mean, these writers have taken all of the greatness of these different captains across all of Star Trek's history, and so this whole idea of sanctification or perfecting, they really are working at perfecting the character of the captain. And given enough time, this character could be ranking at most people's 1 and 2. Given enough time. I mean, it's so good. And particularly around the humility and personableness that y'all have mentioned.
Oh yeah. I'm really glad Christian brought that up because that really is it's funny actually. I'm going to steal from my other podcast. Tomorrow I'm going to do this for my God moment on Whole Church. So if you listen to both shows, sorry, but I've really been wrestling. So this last week, for us recording. Timelines are weird. This is probably coming out like a way later, but sorry, guys. For us recording this last week, South Carolina, where I live, had our primary, and Donald Trump won the Republican primary. And I'm just going to show some of my cards. If you don't agree with me, it's fine. I'm not trying to be offensive. For me, it was very disheartening. For me, I see him as a truly wicked man, and to see my state support him so much, I'm like, oh, that just, it hurts me. And I was listening to, man, I wish I could remember the guy's name. But I was listening to, for me, a newer artist that I found. I think it's Zach Bryan might be his name. Am I thinking the right name? Doesn't matter. There's a few different songs. He's like going south and he's singing about different like things about Southern culture and stuff. And it reminds me of like the things I do love about where I live. Like, it's not all the things that I don't love. And you see like the winding roads down where our iced tea still has sugar in it. And I'm like, yeah. There is stuff that I still love about my home. and just kind of learning to be positive about it. That's something I think Captain Pike does as well. Like you can look at Captain Kirk and see a lot of the good American stuff, and even some of the bad stuff with like the womanizing and all that. That is part of American culture. I just but then seeing Captain Pike and like having that Southern hospitality, I'm going to serve you. You just came to my ship. Let me cook for you. You know, that kind of stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. There's something that's truly good about being American still also. And I filled my heart with a little bit of joy. I needed it. And I needed this talk. So Christian, go ahead. Tell us your number 2 pick.
Said Justin's name earlier because I kind of realized I think we have the same list. Because mine is James T. Kirk. If our number 1 isn't the number 1, I will be shocked.
Oh,
me too.
Great.
This man is what it means to be that, as we mentioned before, that maverick leader, but also at the same time, he doesn't overstep his bounds too much. He will step over the line and make sure, is anyone looking? Okay, step over the line again, then come back over to the other side of the line to make sure he's still on the side of the angels for the sake of others. It's his personality of will of, yeah, he's a womanizer. Yeah, I mean, you take it, it's part of the times, as it were, of how he handled women back in the day. We were still learning. Hey, cultures evolve. It's a thing. And this is a perfect example of that. But he also highly respects his crew.
Oh yeah.
He'll make fun of them. He'll josh them. But like when Scotty says, hey, this is the best way to solve this problem, or McCoy says, hey, this virus or whatever is going to be spreading if we don't do X, Y, Z, or Spock will bring up his cold logical argument. Yeah, Kirk won't often agree, but he'll listen and adapt that part to whatever plan he is making up on the fly to make it look like that was always his plan all along. And I appreciate that immensely as someone who is, I love planning things out, but I've also learned that, from good old Sun Tzu, no plan survives contact with the enemy. No, or was that, I think it might have been someone else. Sorry. I always attribute things to Sun Tzu that he probably never said. And no plan survives contact with the enemy. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be able to think on your feet. And Kirk thinks on his feet like no one else in this series. And we've already brought up A Quality of Mercy from Strange New Worlds, which is a riff on the Balance of Terror. So I could easily use that as my number 1, and I probably would have if I didn't have A Quality of Mercy on here. So to do something different for him, I'm choosing Mirror Mirror, where he is brought over with several of his crew into the mirror universe. We find that Earth is a totalitarian regime that has enslaved other alien races, has kind of gone full fascist, and he is part of that regime in this reality. Everyone's got these evil goatees. We got the agony booth. We've got all these terrible things, and Kirk has to be that person to recognize, well, if I act like myself right now, well, we're all doomed. So I have to act the part of this sociopath on this other side and learn a little more about the situation before we can make the call, how are we going to get back home? That's not an easy choice to make because of what it requires. This is a backstabbing world where we have people that we would never suspect of doing evil things. We got Sulu, Chekhov, doing these terrible, terrible things to the crew, because that's the culture they live in. And he allows it to happen because it means that's the only way he can get his crew back home. He has to deal with the captain's woman there. He has to deal with a very cold, logical Spock who has fallen into being enslaved by another culture, and still has the time to teach him that, hey, this is kind of messed up. What should you be doing instead? That leads a rebellion after they are able to go back home. That unfortunately does cause problems along the way, try to get too peaceful for their own good, and the good old Klingons and Cardassians take advantage of that in DS9. But it's a good thing that those reforms came to be, because Kirk was able to play his cards well, to act for a little bit as something he would never be, a person he would never become, for the sake of his crew. And for the sake of these people he's never met before.
That is a good pick for the episode, man. I love Kirk, and I love like you said, like the improv, and I think for Kirk, one of the things he's probably the best out of any captain listening. He's a very good listener. And I do really appreciate that. Where he's like he knows where his crew is strong. He listens. Okay, this is what we're gonna do. Yeah, I like that. Justin, you got anything else with Captain Kirk?
Well, the other thing I'd say is, before more modern times, Kirk also represented a youngish leader, and so so many of our models of leadership are older, seasoned. They're hair looks a little bit more like mine here, and so when I was younger, I always loved Kirk as this, someone who's willing to take the risks, but also very thoughtful. As Christian has said, he'd step across the line, but then he'd straddle it, but wouldn't go too far off. He didn't let the youthful enthusiasm take him far afield, but he was still captain and could command respect. I mean, in this original series mode, I always appreciated that about him as well.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to remember, like, if we always have the older, more experienced people as leaders, always, eventually people do pass away, and then you'll have a bunch of people with no experience in leadership who have to lead. That's not a good formula for anybody.
Yes.
Oh man. Yeah, that's something the church needs to work on. I think the church my parents go to, like, the average age of a pastor is like in their 60s if they average everyone in the state, and it's like that's not going to work out great here in about 40 years or so, 30, 40 years.
Right.
Anyway, top picks. I did intentionally set this up where both of you have already gone first so that I could do mine first, because I'm afraid you're going to steal mine.
I think we are.
And I told you 2, 3, and 4 are close calls. 1 is not. Captain Benjamin Sisko. Fantastic. Just all around, everything about him. His sense of humor. He would make me laugh. He's easy to get along with. He's a great leader. He reminds me a lot of, like, Solomon in the Bible at times, where there's stuff that you're like, people are arguing. He's like, well, just cut the baby in two. It's like, wait, no. Okay, that's the real mom. Like, like, that is his kind of leadership. He's wise beyond his years. He's able to navigate this thing where he doesn't believe in this religion at all, but these people think he's a prophet because he went to this wormhole. He's able to respectfully kind of not play them as, oh yeah, hey, let me pretend like I'm your God, but also not just be like, your religion's stupid. Of course I'm not. Like, he's able to, like, really manage that in a way that I really don't think anyone else ever could. And he's sitting here in the middle of this station on the brink of war from all these different species. The Klingons end up coming into what's already a messy situation, and he's able to manage all of it. Like, I'm like, incredible leader, incredible father. And it's not just a father to his son. He's a father to his crew. I feel like he has that, like, family relationship with everybody. He's really personable. He listens to his group, and he empowers his people. So a lot of the times it's not even, hey, how are we going to work as a team? He's like, hey, this is a great mission for you. Let me give you everything you need to do this well. Yeah, again, I just think it's great. Even, like, the people who would never get along with Star Trek, he's able to find a way to have them work with him. You think about Quark and Quark's bar on the ship. He's able to make that work with his mission on Star Trek when they're so, like, juxtaposed to each other. And you're like, how? And it makes sense when he does it. And you're like, it's just incredible. Sorry, I'm just going on a rant about how much I love this guy. But I guess that's sort of the point of the episode. For me, if I had to pick an episode, this might be a weird one, but The Visitor. So The Visitor is the episode where he ends up kind of being frozen in time-ish. Weird stuff happens. But his son, he end up showing up in his son's life. So you get this, like, flash through Jake's life. And you have him, like, show up, and he's like, wait, Jake, why didn't you write your book? And, he's showing up, and he's like, you see how caring of a father he is, where he's always first asking about his son. What do you do here? but he's still also asking something about his crew, and he's just showing up in these different periods of time relating. And it was like you could tell he would have sacrificed. Like if it was his choice, yeah, of course. Of course. This is all fine. And you just kind of see him flash through his son's life, and you see what happens to the crew when he's not there. The good, the bad, all of it. You see what happens when he's not there, and you're like, wow, he is too important to not be around. And it's kind of like what's that one Christmas movie I'm thinking of? It's not It's a Good Life. What's it called?
Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. Thank you. Yeah, it has a little bit of that vibe to what happens when you're not there. But more, I feel like it's just you see his heart, and you see what having a man like him around, how it shapes Jake's life, and how it will shape all of the crew's life. And you're like, man, just honestly, it's just someone, even though he's a fictional character, it's like, I aspire to be like that one day. Like I want to be this guy. And I think that's, for me, that's why he's like the number one for me. All right, Christian, I'm gonna let you go ahead and just tell us your number one pick. I'm not even switching the slide.
Absolutely no one. Yeah. My favorite Star Trek captain of all time is Benjamin Sisko.
Mhm.
DS9 is my favorite series, and he is a huge reason for why. He is, in some ways, like a chameleon in how he is able to change himself depending on who he's interacting with. Like Quark, the first episode. He out-Ferengis a Ferengi, which earns Quark's respect.
That was
When
awesome.
it comes to the Bajoran stuff. Yes, like he is so hesitant when other people would have taken advantage of that situation. Be like, oh, so I'm the emissary? Okay, well, heap the praises upon me. It's like he's so like, this is an entire people group that I know very next to little about. I am now this emissary to them. What does that mean? How should I go about it? Let me learn about their culture. Let me learn about who they are so that I can be the best dang emissary possible to them. He is an amazing father in an impossible situation, starting off with his wife being killed by the Borg at Wolf 359. He's raising his son alone. And one of the big things one of the issues that Avery Brooks had with the ending is that he's essentially a single black father leaving his son alone. And he's like, "Hey, we can't be doing this. There's got to be some hope of me coming back. I want to be that a figure that people can look up to as a positive father figure." And he has been that throughout the entire series, not only to Jake, but also even to Nog, and really to his crew overall. Showing and he brings his prejudices into the situation, like with Nog at the beginning. He's like, he's a Ferengi, he's going to lead you astray, Jake. But then he learns what Jake does for him, teaching him how to read, looking after him. It's like he couldn't be prouder of his son in that moment in time, and it's a beautiful thing. And as far as his leadership capabilities elsewhere, if I'm want someone to lead a galactic war against the Dominion, Sisko is my guy. Like he is able to adapt. He is able to listen to other people. He's able to strategize. He fights on the front lines. He fights on the starship. Like that is someone, if I were to show up tomorrow and I'm in a Star Trek universe and I end up in Deep Space Nine and I see Sisko said, guys, we found out that hell is real and we're invading. All we have are water pistols. I'm jumping into hell with a water pistol. Like I trust this man with my life. And
yeah,
I know we may have a disagreement because I know how you feel on certain matters here, Joshua. But it's the easy pick for best episode for DS9 overall, but also for him. And it's In the Pale Moonlight, where he is wrestling with that choice. Do I fake something to bring the Romulans into the Dominion War? Or do I allow us be the more righteous man in this situation and let us get curb stomped like we're currently doing? And through that, they get through his spiel, talking to the computer, being like, hey, I made these decisions. I am guilty of this. I have let men be murdered in the name of bringing peace. And I think I'm okay with it. That is a very rough thing to say. It's a very slippery slope to go on. But if there's anyone I trust to make that decision for the good of everyone, for the good of the whole versus just the good of one, it's Sisko.
Oh, yeah. He's one of those where, like, even though I think I would disagree with that situation, if he looked at me and said, this is what we're going to do, you're going to die doing it, I'd be like, okay, we're doing it then. I'm like, I'm probably wrong. He's probably right. And I like that you said chameleon. And I want to sit on it just for a second before Justin tells us his top pick, which is probably the same, I think. But maybe not. We'll see. I think a lot of people could hear that and think, oh, he's deceptive. He pretends to be something that he's not. But it's not that at all. He out-Ferengis a Ferengi, and the Ferengi knows that he's not really a Ferengi. He just knows how to speak that language, right? And to me, it reminds me of the Bible verse. I try not to do verses of the episode. I'm sorry, guys. But it reminds me of like Paul saying, I'm the Jew to the Jews. I'm a Gentile to the Gentiles. I'll be whatever I need to be so that I might reach some. And I think that's exactly who Sisko is, right? Like, he's this religious order to these people. He's a Ferengi to the Ferengis. He's a Klingon to the Klingons. One time, literally. Right? Because he's like, if I might reach some, if I might help some, that's what he's going to do. And I love it. Okay. Reverend Justin, who's your top pick for captain?
Well, so let me first say, Christian, as you were talking, I thought I really need to make sure that my younger brother listens to this episode, because I think he would agree with everything you said about Benjamin Sisko. And I think that Sisko might be, for our times, in our situation that we're in, dealing with all the difficulties, he might be the best practical captain for our difficult times. I mean, he just might be. Yeah, Benjamin. I've been excited for this moment here because I'm going to surprise y'all. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I was hoping. I'm going to surprise y'all. So let me just give a little bit of prologue here. Part of what I love about Trek is I love being on a ship and I love being out there exploring. I love that's like pure Trek to me. And say that to note, with no offense to anyone else, I like being in the freaking part of the galaxy I'm supposed to be in, on the ship, exploring, So my favorite captain, the captain that was my parent growing up, was actually Jean-Luc Picard.
All right, here we go.
Mind blown. You have played your cards well.
Yeah. This was a great
reveal. I'm so excited about this. I'm so happy because I was hoping. And so several reasons why. I mean, one, he really was a space dad for me. When Next Generation came out, I watched. It's the only series of Star Trek I've watched this way. I insisted that my family be back home so that I could watch every episode. And on the rare occasion that I had to set the timer on the VCR to tape it, it was like, okay, friends, we got to get to that, and no one touch that VCR until we're back home. And so Next Generation really was my Trek. I mean, I watched some of the older ones with my older brother, but from episode 1 with the network of a couple friends in school, we watched every episode, and as soon as it was over, got on the phone and started calling one another to process. I've not hardly watched any series of Star Trek like that. So it has it resonates deeply with me in that way. It is Picard as an initially kind of a stoic captain who's always trying to maintain professional distance with his crew. For some, they just didn't like it. I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the how different he was from Kirk. in that way. I enjoyed how deeply principled he was. I loved all of the soliloquies, all of the mini sermons, moralizing on the spot. Love that mini sermon stuff. You want to do a on the spot sermon slam with anybody? Jean-Luc Picard's. He's probably going to win hands down, because he is so deeply centered in his morality and has seemingly done so much reflection that he can teach in the moment. And I loved that about him. I did. And still wish I could do the same. My 20 to 25 minute sermons were as compelling as his little mini speeches. My gosh. So I love Picard in that, and he still had this tender side about him as well. He deeply cared for this people and this crew, and he knew what sacrifice meant. I mean, you look at so you talk about an episode that really best expresses it. Oh my gosh. I mean, so the inner light is one that many people will lift up. This, he, lives another lifetime. It's such a sweet episode. Anytime someone references that little flute, I get a little misty-eyed. The acting in Chain of Command, particularly the second episode there when he was taken prisoner, and there's like, how many lights are there? I mean, such a good episode. And here I'll be even more surprising. Unpopular take here is I enjoyed Picard, the new series. Okay. Now, Christian's just like, he's like, I don't know this. I thought I knew Justin Coleman. I don't know this man. Like, we're starting from zero in our relationship. But
hey, speak your truth, man.
But I would say that each of the three seasons were their own thing. They really were. They, almost independent. I did not enjoy everything about it, but I enjoyed what they were trying to wrestle through. Some of these loose ends in Picard's life that they were trying to meditate on. And so I tolerated them better than most Trekkies did. I watched every episode, and what was it gonna? I mean, it didn't give me Discovery feelings. I tried to hang with Discovery. I've watched all of it, but it did challenge me in the latter bit. But that third season of Picard, which was almost completely fan service, was good fan service.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed that crew. I mean, of crews, this is the one where every single member of that bridge crew, I have strong emotional connection to those characters. And then Picard at the center of it. So make it so, y'all. I'm all about Picard.
Man.
So there you go. The day.
He's my number one honorable mention.
Yes.
Yeah.
New Generation as a series, kind of as highs and lows for me. it's all over the place. But like as far as consistency, I don't go to next gen. But as far as Picard, I do love his journey from this person who is rigid. These are what we're supposed to do. This is how a ship is supposed to be run. How dare you bring a child up on here? Some of which I agree with Wesley, but that's not really the actor's fault. It is, hey, you start with a man who doesn't like kids, who doesn't like emotional attachments with the people around him. He expects them to just follow orders. And then over 7 seasons and movies, we get a man who starts gaining an appreciation for teaching others, teaching especially younger children and prospective Starfleet students. And you get someone who is willing to listen to what is, the officers under his command have to say, and the lower decks members as well. You get someone who loves his crew so much that he's willing to sacrifice himself for their well-being. And then you get a man who is dealing with PTSD from being assimilated by the Borg. A horrific fate I would wish upon no one ever is to lose your individuality, become part of a collective where you're just a cog in a machine where you have no say. And he's able to experience that and get away from it, and is still dealing with it years after in First Contact, which is one of the finest Star Trek movies ever made, in my opinion. To where, hey, you have right to be angry, but you're letting your revenge cloud you. If you can convince me a character has gone through character development, and part of that character development is a little bit of character regression, and yet you can bring them out of that, you have won a fan. And I love Picard for that.
Yes. Oh, hands down. Yes. Yeah. So that's why Picard's my one.
Yeah. He definitely seems like the most knowledgeable. I haven't seen enough to really know. Again, I can't make it past season 2 for some reason. I really don't know why.
Christian is exactly right. I mean, Next Generation is up and down as far as writing goes. I had recently had some folks try to argue. They were talking about Babylon 5, and they said Babylon 5 is superior to Next Generation in every way. And I said, whoa, that's laying down a gauntlet here. Let's talk about it. And they said, look, the thing about Next Generation writing, it was just it's like a yo-yo. It's up and down. It's all over the place. Babylon 5, that's steady all the way through. And I was like, well, okay, you got.
That's funny.
I see what you're saying.
How dare you use facts and logics in an argument?
Right.
So before we get to wrapping up, I did want to see, does anybody have any least favorite captain or any honorable mentions we want to bring up? I do have an honorable mention. I don't know if I have a least favorite, really.
Another honorable mention, I do like Saru, or how do I pronounce his name? He's, I mean, for a show that I really despise with every fiber of my being, he's one of the few bright lights within it. And his decision making, I love the way they play with his species, and how they relate to the world. I think they go a little too far in seasons 3 and 4 with how important his species is, but that is what it is. Least favorite, I mean, not really. I mean, I think I love Janeway. She's one of the most inconsistently written captains. It's not her fault. They have different writers saying this is who she is, this is who she is. So I can't blame her for that. There's definitely not a least favorite. I actually admire her for being someone who is alone 70,000 years away from help and having to make these difficult choices. Like, I would not envy anyone in that position. So I don't think there's anyone I hate.
Me neither.
I liked her. What's it? Prodigy? Is that the other one that she's like a hologram in? I like
yes. Yeah. So Prodigy was going to be an honorable mention for me. Not that Janeway is the captain. I mean, you essentially have kids, a child who's the acting captain in the show. But so my honorable mention of that show is that I think it's a really fun show for kids. And in a way that, for my 10-year-old, where, lower decks, not quite. But Prodigy was interesting trek with some interesting dynamics going on, thinking about family and the forging of the family of a crew that I appreciated. from a kid's point of view, and also enjoyed very much Janeway's holographic persona in that show.
My honorable mention is Jonathan Archer.
Yeah,
he was.
We got to mention Archer here. Archer, yeah,
pretty close to my number 3. I do love Captain Archer. I think the main reason he wouldn't be one of my favorite, he's the most relatable to me. Where I'm like, I see myself in him a lot, if that makes sense. Like a lot of his mistakes and a lot of like how he struggles, especially since this is like early Trek, and how he struggles with aliens at all, basically. Like what this other species, are they out to get us? You know, all those kind of questions that Will really likes in sci-fi. I think that's what he's struggling the most with, and it's maybe it's a little too fundamental sci-fi for Star Trek, because usually we get past that in all of our other shows. We start off past that. But I kind of like seeing just kind of the beginnings of it and seeing how he navigates that situation at all, and dealing with the other and how we treat those aren't like us. And yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. Just
Enterprise and Archer deserved a lot better than what they got.
Yes.
If we've gotten the full 7 seasons like we get for the other captains, except for Kirk, it's not his fault that happened with the cancellation. But if we had gotten more from them, I think he'd be more appreciated. But we are only left with the 4.
Yeah. All right, we're looking at you, Star Trek. New Trek. Finish out those last 3 seasons. Whoever writes Strange New Worlds should do it, though, not whoever did Discovery.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Discovery, the first season, I do want to say just a word about Discovery, because we've all said a few things.
It's a lot more Star Warsy.
Yeah, it's a lot more Star Warsy, and in that, by the time they got through this original Klingon conflict, which I'm still trying to figure out, and they, they settle in with Giorgio from the alternate dimension, and Burnham is really just kind of beginning to take control. We haven't launched into the future yet. There was a sweet moment in there where I thought, this could be good. This could be good. And I think it ended up trying to do too many things, and became, every scene was highly emotional. I mean, it was hard to live on the emotional edge that Discovery had you on, scene to scene. And that was just an unfortunate thing. But there was a moment where I thought, man, this could be really good. Alas.
Yeah. Alas. Although I have managed to finish Discovery, so it's clearly not I clearly don't hate it that much. Although sometimes it's easier to watch something you dislike than something that you only kind of like. I don't know if that makes sense. Like for me, I liked Picard season 1. I really despise season 2, but I got through 2 really quick. I think I was keep watching it. It's like, why am I watching this garbage? Next episode. I don't know. Something's wrong with me. But anyway, let's go to our wrap up. We are going to, as always, start with some recommendations, and mine's going to be pretty relevant. If I'm going to recommend anything, Strange New Worlds has their own comic books. Give you some more of the story with some of these beloved characters. I think it's great. So I will recommend the Strange New World comics. Pick them up. All right, Reverend Justin, what are your recommendations today? A recommendation.
My goodness. Well, my recommendation is y'all gonna actually go back and watch all of Picard and enjoy it for what it's worth, what it's trying to say. That's my recommendation.
All right. Christian.
So real quick, that no plan survives first contact with the enemy quote is by Helmut von Moltke, who was a Prussian/German general.
On this whole time.
Yes, I love correcting myself when I get something wrong.
Boy. Anyway.
So there's that. And you may notice that the 1800s are 2,000 years removed from when Sun Tzu would have written. So there's that. But as far as my actual recommendation, if you guys have never played Star Trek Elite Force or Star Trek Elite Force 2, you are missing out. I don't know where they're available anymore, but if you want an action game where you're shooting at some alien species, but also protecting the Star Trek Voyager, like this is a fun game. And in the sequel, you get to actually interact with Picard more on the Enterprise. It's a ton of fun. Star Trek Elite Force 1 and 2.
Man, all Star Trek themed. We don't always do our recommendations as stuff that's relevant. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, if you can, go ahead and give us a smash that like and subscribe button down below. And if you're listening to a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or if you can make it over to Podchaser, it's always helpful to get rates and reviews there so other people see the show. Again, huge shout out to Austin Nance for supporting the show. This is not possible without listeners and supporters like Austin. Be like Austin, everybody. That's my recommendation. Be like Austin. And guys, of course, we need you to do one very important thing for us, which is to remember we're all a chosen people, a geekdom of priest